Hey everyone, we're here today. Mike's in Toronto, Karen's in Montreal, Russ is in South Jersey somewhere. Kevin, you're in Michigan. What's up, Kev? What do you got going on?
And that is in
Well,
space.
yeah. I just wanted to have just a little pre-show that I'll try to move around to hockey as well. But I was watching this morning. There's, as everyone knows, there's a WHA style golf situation developing where LIV Golf has come in and they've paid a lot of money to a lot of players. Certainly, NHL went through that in the '70s with the WHA.
Yeah,
And they've formed their own golf league. But now there's an argument over what's happening with the world rankings. The LIV Golf people said we need to be involved in that our tournament should count for that. And
right.
the PGA said, no, no, no. You know, it says right in our charter, you got to play 72 hole tournaments. You guys play 54. You don't have cuts. We say you got to have cuts. We say you got to have a field of at least 75. You have 48. So no, it's not going to happen. We're just not going to involve you. You're just not going to be ranked. And, you know, your players knew that. But what I find interesting about it is what the players have had to say about it. And this is where I'm going to tie it in hockey. Because one of the things they keep bringing up, and I really like this, and I appreciate the fact that these golfers say, you know, the one thing about the world rankings is that, you know, it ties us to players like Nicholas and Palmer and all that, because, you know, this is a mathematics thing. You know, it's a determination that's based on a mathematical formula that they figure in, and it allows us to sort of link and compare ourselves to some of the great golfers of all time. And it's refreshing, in my opinion, that we do have modern athletes who want to appreciate and salute, you know, players of yesteryear. And, you know, I hope that, you know, our sport continues to, you know, celebrate our tradition, because I think hockey does a pretty good job of that.
It does. You
They
know,
do.
and
You know, the one flip side I would say on this golf thing, and I do appreciate what you said about what the golfers do. But the thing is, you know, once you sign up with an organization like LIV, you're not going to get that built-in prestige or any of those other things that came with the PGA. Like, you know, when you left, like, those things weren't going to happen. And players can't have it all. If you want to have all the money, you're going to lose some prestige. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you completely. I mean, I think they shouldn't allow them to be ranked either. But I was speaking of the players who are on the PGA who have said,
okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was on both sides. Gotcha.
No. PGA people have said, no, you know, you haven't earned that right. The rules are,
I don't blame them.
cut and dry. You know, it's spelled out. You know, so and this has been, you know, the rules have, you know, caused consternation for before, and they've stuck to their guns on them. I mean, there's been some European tournaments that have gone 54 holes. There've been European tournaments that didn't have the right number of field, and players don't get points for those. So, you know, I think it's good standing up to the WHA. I mean, the LIV, and you know, we'll move on.
Well, let me just say this. The thing is like, I understand the distaste that the LIV Golf Tour has and how they've poached players from the PGA, and the distaste is because it's essentially Saudi blood money that is funding it. But you know what? The PGA isn't exactly cleaner than Caesar's wife here. They don't pay appearance fees. They think they have a closed shop. I think these players are essentially just trying to get the best thing for themselves. And if that means going someplace else and getting more money because the PGA won't pay them enough or won't pay them what they think they're worth, then, you know, let the free market reign, and let's see what happens in a couple years. I think this could wound the PGA. And then in the end, you know, to use your comparative, Kev, 4 WHA teams made the NHL. So maybe these players will come back and there'll be some sort of compromise. But right now, I can understand why Phil Mickelson and some of these other players go to play in these tournaments, because they're getting more money than they'll probably ever get in the PGA.
Yeah, you know what, though? It's not a small thing. I mean, you just kind of laid that out like it was an incidental thing, that this is blood money. But, you know, when the tournament, or when the tour, that tour is bankrolled by a government that has acted the way it has. I mean, you got to salute guys. Tiger Williams turned down, according to Norman, between $800 and $900 million.
Yep.
Now, there's some principle there, to stand up against and turn that kind of money down, because he's done. Tiger Woods is done, like in terms of winning tournaments. So that would have been like free money to him.
Sure,
I get it. He's rich, but you turn down that kind of money. So I don't understand it. I really don't. I mean, I get that they want to make more money. I would have a completely different attitude if there was a unit in North America, a company that was bankrolled. And they had put this up, I would actually be very supportive, because I don't disagree with you that players should be able to get and make kind of money. Although the tournament purses have grown considerably since Tiger Woods came along. So
what the other thing is too, Kev, these tournaments some of them are 100 years old. You can't expect LIV to mean as much to fans watching it or anybody else other than whoever's paying money to go see those events to feel the same way. It's not going to.
But
it's like the world's Mike. It would be like any other league trying to start and trying to have their own World Series and say, we're going to have our World Series. Well, people are going to be like, that's great, but it means nothing compared to the real World Series.
But here's where the battle is going to be, and I don't know how this is going to play out, but I do know that like the Masters in Augusta is run separately from the PGA. I believe so is the U.S. Open, and so is the British Open. So these players who go to those are on the LIV Tour can play in those championships. Now, if the PGA all of a sudden says, "Well, we're not going to make our players available if you're going to make the LIV players available," then you have a war going on. And I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I do know that will be a battle going forward.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think the compromise will be just like they let in 4 WHA. I think at some point up the road they're going to bring in. They'll say the top 4 LIV tournament players will count their points.
In the world. This is possible. I was just watching the Ken Burns documentary on baseball again, and when you go back to if you want to hear players trying to start their own leagues, way back, when Spalding was the big guy at Major League Baseball, and he was just an evil guy who basically ran the whole friggin' thing. And I
don't know if he was evil. He was a smart businessman.
At least the way it's portrayed in what I've been watching.
Yeah, I know Ken Burns goes a little over the top too.
Yeah, and there was
get too far into that, but I just was saying there have been many leagues over the years that have tried to start in different ways, and the players getting usually because the players feel like they're getting screwed in some way, shape, or form.
And there is still proof of one of those leagues, because when Kevin, Russ, and I visited Wrigley this summer, that was built to play for the Chicago team in the Federal League, which no longer exists.
Right.
So now, one quick thing, because I obviously love hockey history, and I'm really enthused to see the Summit 72 series that's on CBC. I think the next episode's tonight, and then there's one on the 28th, which is the 50th anniversary of the famous Game 8 of Canada-Russia. I missed most of the first episode, and it is available on CBC for broadcast TV, and then on CBC Gem, which is their online website. So, of course, I go to watch it on CBC Gem because I missed the first 45 minutes. And lo and behold, because of geo-blocking, some lowly guy in the U.S. who's 8 miles away from the Canadian border can't watch it. CBC, the FCC, and the Canadian version of the FCC get on the same page, because this blows. It really sucks.
Welcome to every, that's.
Yeah. How about just speaking of that, and I found this highly entertaining. I don't know if you saw it on social media, because it wasn't widespread, but there was a discussion, a thread that sort of spread a little bit, had its tentacles out, regarding that someone had taken note. One thing that occurs to me as I watch all this is, he says, we're usually the good guys. He said, we might have been the jerks in that. That's I'm using the word jerks. That's not the word he used.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. And he said, we really, when you look at, breaking Harlamov's leg and just the way we acted, the way we went after it, he said, we were we wore the black hats in that. Like you said, I'm sure there are Russian folks that look at that and go, those are a bunch of hooligans. That
history is written by the winners, Mike, right? I mean, that's like the reality is like at the end of the day, Mike being a history guy like that, you see it. I mean, it's just, I was just, and this Karen just ties into Montreal too, because I was just watching today, I was listening to XM radio, and Scott Lawton's on there, and he says, oh yeah, like that time that Larry Robinson saved the NHL, when that Canadiens team beat the Flyers in 1976, and that saved the NHL from disaster, where the NHL was heading in the absolute awful way,
and he beat up Dave Schultz. Yeah,
I mean, really? I mean, I listen. I mean, obviously, growing up in Philly, it's kind of. And I understand that the Flyers weren't.
I think that's the Canadian look at it, Eck. I think
it is, and that's what's kind of interesting about these things. It's like I mean, eventually, skill was going to win out, right? Like we've seen this like in time and time again. But just because they were the Broad Street Bullies for a while there, and they just pissed everybody off, and they were this new team. Anyway, it's pretty funny to listen to how that goes down. Let's get going here. All right, it's the first day of fall. Hello, Hockey World. It is. Oh God! It's Wednesday. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday. I don't know what day it was. Sorry, I knew it was the first day of fall.
September 21st.
Wednesday, September 21st, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and it's impossible to mute me.
I'm Karen Nice, and that golf pre-show made me miss baseball. Actually,
wow. Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen. Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund, and my wife's response was, she loves the documentary, Karen, but she says, it's amazing that I can love a documentary that's like 35 hours long, watch the whole thing, and not want to watch a single minute of baseball. That's what, because I love the history of it, but I just don't want to, I won't put a game on. I'm like, well, I'm not that bad. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzzcast.com. This is the podcast that comes in now back to every Monday through Friday to fill you in on comings and goings in the hockey world. And we're going to start today with Karen, because you wrote a really great piece, and I know yesterday when I got the text from you, I was like, oh man, I gotta have you on, because PK Subban retiring means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it sent literal shockwaves in Montreal. Really, it wasn't like it wasn't at all expected, because it was getting late and everyone's getting PTOs, and it just didn't seem like PK was gonna go for a PTO anyway. Yeah. So I was half expecting it, but I must say I was relieved to see that it did not sign a PTO like Kevin mentioned could happen with Boston. It was like, no. I don't want to see that. That would have been awful.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's weird. I'm a bit sad because I feel like it's quite early for him to retire. But then again, at the same time, his game kind of dropped off a lot in the last few years. So, probably better that he did retire when he did.
He's such an interesting personality, and just for our sport, kind of unique in so many ways, right? And just to me, the fascinating thing about him is not just his game on the ice, which was always interesting, and not just the big trade, which was very memorable, but just the person, the person himself. Like, just I got to sit next to him on a plane one time on a short trip, and just a fantastic guy. And then of course the children's hospital, and now having a kid, I have a kid who spends a lot of time in children's hospitals, and just to see what he did up there. It's just, I can't, and how people ripped that at one point, like people were like,
yeah, it's amazing, but at the same time he was kind of a polarizing figure in Montreal, because all of the fans loved him because of the fact that he was purely electrifying on the ice and for what he was doing off the ice, but apparently he wasn't so great in the room. And then you've got former coach Michel Therrien that came out yesterday saying, okay, here's the truth about my relationship with PK Subban. Actually, when I came in as coach, I accepted to be the bad guy and put him in his place so that his teammates wouldn't have to do it themselves. That's the version he gave yesterday anyway. And it's just like, well, yeah, okay, but it remains that Montreal has been starved for, spectacular hockey for so many years. And when Subban was there, that was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
He would get behind the net and start up the ice, and the whole crowd in the Bell Center would be like, oh, something's happening. A bit like when you're a kid and you're watching the Mighty Ducks movie and they do the flying V. You're like, oh, it was the same. And then they took that away from us.
I had been in that room a few times, and I saw that there was like some jealousy coming from veterans in that room. They were jealous of the attention that he got. He was putting up the points, so I don't see why they had a problem. But I could see it. I could feel it when I was in the room.
It's so funny because I talked to different people, and some people said yes, some people, but a lot of people I talked to who had a brain in their head, like I'm gonna throw Danny Briere, a buddy of mine, out who played with him for a while, and I said, "What's the deal with PK? Is this really because I wanted to know, is this really a locker room issue or not?" And he's not. He's a good guy. He's going to be always diplomatic. He's never going to tell me it is. But he also said, "Listen, he's just PK Subban. That's what he is. It's like, why do we make this thing? Like, what does it matter? Like, the people around, like, I don't care." He's like, and it's fascinating how, and he said he's a good guy to me. He's always a good guy to me, and I never had an issue with him. Just that's the way it goes. Fascinating that we would put this player on that team. That to me was, Kevin, that's like the thing, like of all the teams that PK Subban could end up on, right? Montreal.
Well, he was in the wrong sport for his personality. The NHL is not accepting of guys that express their individuality off the ice or on the ice. And, it's true. I mean, I know for a fact that there were problems with teams, and Russ was right on the money. Yeah. It's jealousy. Yeah. They didn't like that he got all the attention, that everybody wanted to talk to him. And they couldn't see, again, and I'll apologize if you're in, because I'm going to mention golf again, but I find it curious that, when Tiger Woods came along, his colleagues were very, very accepting and were happy that Tiger Woods would come along and he was getting all the attention, because suddenly more people started coming out. In hockey, we don't see that. Right. Like players don't care about that or don't want to see it or whatever. They're not trying to grow the game. They're trying to play and be part of a team. We always talk about that. Well, that's the negative side of the sport, where they aren't accepting of guys like, football. It's readily accepted. Like, they don't care what you do. And, you can, catch a touchdown pass and take your pen out and pretend you're signing an autograph. You can do all kinds of things in that sport. But in hockey, we're just not accepting. And I don't think he really was that outlandish. I just think he was outgoing. That was the only issue. And I find him always was fun to talk to, very entertaining, always charitable, was a really good hockey player. And even last night, I was kind of irritated as I sort of looked at some of the reaction. And, some people said, well, he's such a smart player. He recognized he just couldn't perform at the level that was accepting. And other people just said, see, this is what I was saying. He just didn't have, if he would have signed with any, his passion isn't in the game anymore. I'm not sure that's true. I tend to think he's just a smart guy and understood that maybe this was the best time for him to leave.
Well, I definitely think that, and Russ and I talked about this yesterday, that he was not going to get a one-year contract from somebody. He was going to have to go into a PTO, and he's made a lot of money, and he's got a burgeoning media career. I talked to somebody, and they said, he's probably going to go to ESPN. If he went to someplace in Canada, he could be the next Don Cherry in a different context, obviously. But he's got that ebullient personality, and probably would trash talk and do that kind of stuff. And it's something that I think would make him a media star, and he might be a media star with ESPN. And God knows they need it, because some of the stiffs that they had on last year were terrible. But I think he was okay. I think he was a little misunderstood in his career. Like, he didn't, like, when he scored a goal, he didn't fly across the ice on his knees like Thurin Fleury. He didn't do the spinorama and pump his stick like Tiger Williams. He was, he was colorful. He was enthusiastic. I mean, for other fan bases, they loved to hate him because he was good. But I think that he liked playing. What is that dinging noise? He liked playing the villain, and I think there is a place for that in professional sports with players who like to play the villain.
Yeah, and he was so great at it as well, because for the whole rivalry with Boston during 2010 to like 2016 or whatever, I don't think I'll ever forget that quote from Subban saying, "I can't wait to go in that building and suck out all the hair out of it.
Right.
When they beat Boston in Game 7. It was just so big. And just, I was looking through my favorite Subban highlights yesterday, and I can't not mention that hit on Brad Marchand.
Yeah,
because that's the player everyone loves to hate in Montreal, and the way he just obliterated him, it was just brilliant. So
yeah, no, it was. And here's a guy who goes on, like, he goes on the Daily Show. I remember he goes on the Daily Show at one point, in an interview and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching it with my wife, and my wife's like, "Man, I love that guy. That guy is great. He just why don't you get more hockey players like that? This is like a casual hockey fan. She's forced to like hockey or watch hockey because she lives here. But she's like, that guy, and that's and it's like, what, Kevin, is he like too much for the sport, or is the sport too little for itself? Like, that's where I want to.
Yeah, well, that's what I would argue, but
yeah,
I'm sure they would say he's too much for the sport. And like I said, I never felt he was really outlandish. There are a lot of other athletes in a lot of other sports that are more out there than he ever was. He just, like I said, he was outgoing. He was entertaining. He's engaging. We just couldn't be accepted of that. We want everybody fits into their cubby hole. You don't want to be different than anyone else. You want to blend in. That's just the history of our sport, and it's not one of the good traditions that I like.
Yeah, it's really not.
Yeah, I gotta ask. Corinne,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's not Subban related, but I have to ask you, since we're going to talk about the Canadiens in a minute and camp is open. In Montreal, especially with women, how was it received with Logan Mailloux kind of getting just thrown into the mix there, and no word being said like, hey, we're going to give this guy a second chance, this is why, and they just kind of said he's in camp. They didn't even really say it. It's just people found out that he was on the roster.
Yeah, but he still doesn't have an entry-level contract. They still haven't said what they're gonna do with him. But yeah, it kind of feels like they want to put that under the radar type of thing.
Of course,
that's what it looks like anyway. I was in Brassard yesterday, and I saw him there wearing the baby blue jersey of guy can't make contacts or anything. But yeah, I'm not sure what they're gonna do with him actually, because he remains a remnant of the former administration. So I don't know if they'll give him a contract or not. They've got until the 1st of June next year, I think, to sign him, something like that.
Well, maybe they'll go down the road of trading him to Edmonton, because God knows Edmonton's collecting guys like that.
It is another thing that Montreal has done. At times they're a fascinating organization in general. They act very big. Like talking to people at the NHL. I've mentioned this before, but there's 2 teams I get that the NHL is afraid of. And it's Montreal and the Rangers. They're always,
but you think about it, they did a poor job the first time. And as Corinne said, this is a new administration, and they just sort of did nothing.
Yeah, they did. I mean,
you would have thought they would have wiped their hands with it, but they wiped their hands away from him. But he was a first-round pick, Russ, and he's an asset. And maybe they think, okay, at least we can move him someplace and get something for him. I think, honestly, I think you would cleanse your organization and say, we're not going to accept somebody like that, and we're going to move on. But,
yeah.
Who was the kid that Arizona drafted? Didn't he get a chance someplace?
Mitchell Miller.
Yeah, didn't he get a chance someplace else? I mean, everybody's going to get.
Not yet.
Yeah, but there's talk about him doing that.
I mean, I don't know about we all know what he the issues that he had and stuff like that. But there, and do people deserve second chances or not? I mean, that's the question. That's a question here.
But they do deserve second chances. And I think certainly in America we're kind of known for that. We like to rehabilitate images of athletes, but not enough time has passed. There has to be a proper period, and not enough time has passed for this.
It's too soon. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. So let's get into the Montreal Canadiens 2022-2023. Very rarely do we have a season like this, coming out. Very rarely is an expectation. Can you remember an expectation lower, Karen?
No, I can't actually. The official story has always been you cannot go through a rebuild in Montreal. The fans would not accept it. Well, turns out we do accept it, because want to see some offense from that team one day or another. I think the general feeling amongst the fan base is that we're fed up of being the bubble team that just hopes and prays that Carey Price can perform a miracle.
Right.
So yeah, the stars are aligning right now because Carey Price is out for the season, can't play. So finally, Montreal is gonna have to remember that you need to play some offense to win hockey games. So
True.
yeah.
True. I mean, that's
Let me start this discussion off by I just got off a conference call with Steve Eiserman, who was talking about his own team. But my last question to him, we all asked 2 or 3 questions each, was when you're rebuilding, you never pay any attention to what's going on in the division when you're starting out, because your concentration is just to improve your team. All of a sudden, Detroit, everyone's looking around. They've made a lot of strides this summer, a lot of new guys. Some fans think about playoffs, and so I asked him whether that had happened to him, and he basically said yes. And he started rattling off, and he said, I just looked at this division and it makes my head spin. And he talked about everything. He said, Boston, he goes, I really think they have drafted well. And he said, people are talking about Montreal, and I look at Montreal, and he goes, they have 3 or 4 young players that I really like. That's always the Steve Eiserman endorsement. And finally he concluded by saying, essentially, this is how I view it. There are 3 teams in the Metropolitan that have a playoffs berth sewed up. There are 3 in the Atlantic, and everybody else is fighting for 2 spots. That's what he had to say about it. So
yeah.
But anyway, I thought it was interesting that he commended. He liked. He didn't name them, but he just said, they have 3 or 4 really good young players. Implying that he would like to have them. So
yeah. No, I think that's really accurate. I mean, and let's talk about the 4 big acquisitions in my mind, like from this past season, this offseason. And there are 4. I mean, we all know, they're going to struggle, but and it has to start with the number 1 pick overall, which you were there. You were there. They're like crazy, like people wearing, wearing jerseys saying, make the right choice in the whole 9 yards. There are already Shane Wright jerseys printed up.
Yeah, there were quite a few jerseys out there.
Yeah.
Well, let me because Russ would know. This is a discussion that Russ and I have had since the draft, and one of the things that I'm always concerned about when it comes to guys who are picked first overall, and everybody, like I said, everybody thought Shane Wright was going to be the number 1 pick. They take Slafkovsky. I think he's a kid with a lot of talent, but the concern I have here, and Russ, is them putting him in a primary role right away. And if they do that, if he's ready for it, that's great. But I think it's better to sort of give him a little opportunity, maybe on the 3rd line, let him sort of ingratiate himself, let him acclimate himself to the NHL, and then maybe give him more time as the season goes along. You throw him in the deep water and he's not ready for it, you could ruin a guy like that. So what do you think?
I mean, I don't think they'll ruin him, but I do think putting him on a 3rd line would be good. I have to wonder if he's going to be used to NHL pace and what it takes to kind of be ready for 82 games of that.
Yeah.
He's never, had to experience any of that in his life. He played a lot of games last year, but none of them were like NHL quality. So you have to think about that. And somebody there has to notice it, whether it's St. Louis or somebody else, to say, okay, are we going to have him up here so he could score 15 goals and play 82 games? Or are we going to let him play in the AHL where if he's going to dominate for a couple months, then we call him up and we say, okay, you're here to stay, but you proved it. That's what that's the balancing act they're going to have.
What would you do, Garen?
Well, basically, they keep saying that they don't want to make Slafkovsky have the best season he can at 18 years old. They want him to be the best player he can be in the long run. So it's all going to hinge about on his development, really. I don't think they'll send him down to Laval, but I don't think they'll throw him in the deep end either. I don't see a line with Slafkovsky, Caulfield, and Suzuki right away. I really don't. I think they'll be careful with him, and they'll do it the right way. They've seen how they can burn young guys in Montreal easily as well. So you can't just throw him to the wolves like that. You don't put him you want to give him winning conditions. If you give him a 3rd line assignment, he doesn't have to move mountains. If you put him on the 1st line, then you're raising expectations exponentially. So
True.
I think they'll be smart about it.
Marian Hossa seems to think he's ready, fellow countryman, right? He's like, I read a quote from him. He's ready to start the season with the best players in the world. Throughout the season, he will learn and improve. But I don't see a problem in his game. In my opinion, he'll catch on pretty much immediately.
I just think they'll do what most teams do, which is they'll test him in the preseason. They'll see how he does, and they'll start him on that line based on his performance. I think most teams do start their guys out. Like fans were all talking about Lafreniere last year playing on the top line, but he ended up on the third line. And Lucas Raymond wasn't even on the radar to make the team, and he ended up playing on the first line from the very first. Didn't go to the AHL in the opening minute. He started on the first line. He was on the first line at the end. So I think players themselves sort of dictate how they're going to start and where they're going to play. I think most coaches kind of look at it. But I think Mike's point is well taken. You got to be careful with them, but I think they'll do what's right for the player.
He's got a big personality.
Yeah,
I feel like that's.
I mean, fans are going to love him. Media is going to love him. I don't think he takes himself too seriously.
I don't think so either.
But I just, sometimes teams think just because a guy's big, he can handle, playing up, whether that's a better line or whatever. Yeah. Even if you see some things in preseason, because look, again, we all talk about preseason, how it's not exactly NHL play. It's something like it because there's, only like 6 or 7 players really playing every night, especially at the beginning with these 71 or 70. The Flyers have 71. I think the Sabres have like 74 people in camp. So
Montreal has 74 as well.
Yeah, so you're not going to see a lot of NHL talent at the beginning. So I think what Kevin says makes sense. Yeah. But still, I would not have a problem sending him to Laval if it's just a matter of, hey, we think you could play center. Why don't you play center in Laval? Or if it's a matter of, hey, we want you to play top line in Laval and really just do everything that you're used to doing. Do it there first.
I like his personality. Go ahead, Karen.
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
That was me. But here's, Corinne, this is where I have a question because I look at the roster, what we expect is going to make the NHL this year. And you've got Brendan Gallagher with 4 years left after this year, Josh Anderson with 4 years left, Jonathan Drouin, Dadonov, Paul Byron, UFAs at the end of the year. In my mind, what Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes should be concentrating on, and I'm not saying like just trade him for nothing, but you are in a rebuild here. You're the center of your team is going to be Suzuki, is going to be Caulfield, is going to be Slavkovsky, and not to say you move these guys out immediately for as much as you can, but I do think that the focus before the end of the year is to move 4 or 5 guys off of this roster and to facilitate the rebuild. Because more than likely they're going to finish in 7th or 8th in the Atlantic Division.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, Mike. That's where the focus needs to be. But this is what happens when you start a rebuild with a new administration. The guy who was there before was not considering a rebuild. So they signed a lot of people for long deals, and now you're kind of stuck with it. And then Kent Hughes came aboard, and he said, I'm not in the business of selling low. So he's not going to trade Jonathan Drouin now that his value is, as low as it has or as it has ever been. He's going to build him up a bit. He's going to see if, Martin Saint-Louis can make an impact on his game. And then if he gets out and he puts up points, then he'll trade it for something. Yeah. And it was interesting yesterday in Brassard because training camp hadn't started yet, but the Habs veterans are still playing in the morning. They're training in the morning, like unofficially. And Drouin was actually always playing on the same line as Suzuki, while Caulfield was always playing on the same line as Kirby Dach. And that was interesting, really, because Drouin and Suzuki were working well together. So I'm looking forward to see if we might not see an experiment like that with Saint-Louis at the start of the preseason games, at least.
Yeah. Now, the next guy on my list here is Kirby Dach, which they pick up Kirby Dach. An interesting move. I like Kirby Dach. I think he had a lot of potential not too long ago. That everybody was like saying this guy is going to be all that, and he gets hurt. Of course, he has a big injury. But what are your thoughts on that pickup?
Well, I think it's worth the gamble. I mean, trading Romanov for essentially that's what it was. Romanov and a pick for Kirby Dach. And I think that was a good gamble, to be honest, because Montreal needs to have good centers. They just do. A friend of mine did a signing session with Denis Savard not long ago, and Savard was telling him that the problem with Dach in Chicago, well, part of the problem with him was that he wasn't taking like training and the practices seriously enough. He wasn't into it enough.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, looking at him on the ice, he was into it. He was really taking it to heart. I think this guy's thinking, okay, this is my chance at a do-over. I need to perform, and I think he's serious about it. So I have a good feeling about it for now. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do on the ice because I've not seen him play that much. But, yesterday he looked like a guy who means business. So that's good news.
Yeah. Then they go out and they make an interesting move by getting Dadonov in. Like a little surprising. Dadonov was a lot. We talked about Dadonov a lot last year on HockeyBuzzcast because he obviously was a player who was in the news quite a bit, and I thought was really actually very good in Vegas, and almost brought Vegas to the playoffs himself. Like he was one of the guys who was trying to do it. I like him a lot.
But this is an example act of Kent Hughes selling cap space for assets. It's 1 year at I think $5 or $5.5 million. They got a draft pick. I believe it was a second round pick, Corinne, if my memory serves. So they rent it. They're going to use him as a body for a year. They're going to hope they get a good year out of him, and then they're going to sell him at the deadline for as much as they can get for him. It's not a bad move when you're a team that's in a rebuild. These are the things that you do. You accumulate assets, and then you accumulate more assets, and that's what they're doing with Dadonov. So I think it was a no-brainer for a team that had a lot of cap space at the time to do that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a smart move, and I think he'll help some of the young players, right? I mean, he's got a good attitude. He's a good guy. I think he will help players. And then finally, Mike Matheson, who in my opinion, is the other big pickup of the summer, and.
Well, they had to get rid of Petrie. They had to get rid of Petrie because Petrie didn't want to be there anymore. And Matheson
I think that Petrie I'll take Matheson over Petrie any day of the week for this team, right? I mean,
I still wouldn't, but look offensively, sure. Overall, no.
Kevin, thoughts?
I think both of them had deficiencies. Petrie had sort of outlived his usefulness, and Matheson has never lived up to expectations. He's got some offensive skill. 1 year he was the MVP of the World Championships, and everybody thought, well, this is it. He'll turn the corner. He's just never got to that corner. He just hasn't been able to get around it. There are moments when he's exciting. I mean, he's got skill. He can move the puck. He can be fun, but there's some inconsistency there. So I think both sides knew what they were getting. And I don't know exactly what the contract situation is, but I think they were happy to get out of the Petrie deal. And I think, don't they have a little more flexibility with Matheson? It's certainly less money.
Yeah, the contract is definitely a big thing, right? But he also is. I mean, I was critical of him when he was in Florida. I wasn't impressed at all, and yet I thought last year he proved me wrong a couple times during the season. I thought he had some big moments, like for the Penguins. I thought he actually
can do that, for sure.
He showed those moments at times. He was
better with the Penguins, but I also think because the Penguins have such a structure that they were able to play to his strengths and get him to work in that system. But in Montreal, it's going to be like a little different that way. So I don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah.
I think Petrie's going to have a great year in Pittsburgh with, Crosby and all of those guys in the town as well. Whereas Madison comes to Montreal in a pressure cooker. He's just had a great year in Pittsburgh, but he had a heck of a starring cast in front of him. So I'm not sure how that's going to translate in Montreal, but I know that they had to get him because, Hughes basically had a gun to his head. He had to trade Petrie. He had to get some experienced defensemen back because you can't have a blue line with 4 rookies on it. You just can't do that.
Right.
So, we're just hoping for the best on that case, I think.
I mean, the trading of Romanov. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, it's because the Carnes right on. I mean, yes, it's going to, poke his head up, look up ice, and say, "Where's Crosby? Where's Malkin? where am I going?" That's it's hard to. The reason why he sometimes would look really good in Pittsburgh is because he had those guys that could really take advantage of it.
So. Sorry, I got a problem here. 1 second. Perfect. You guys continue.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's a big thing. I think the big question I would have for you, Karen, is while Kirby Doc may be taking things more seriously, are they really going to try and jam him into the second line center role, or do they have an openness to maybe put him on the third line center and kind of see how he does first, rather than the Christian Dvorak method, which failed?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna go like that with Doc. I think they're gonna take their time again and see if they can turn things around. I think that would be the prudent approach, and I'm pretty sure that's the one they'll be taking. Otherwise, it might just be too much too soon, quite frankly.
And do they? I mean, I don't know what the injury status of Monahan is, whether he'll be out the first couple months or the first half of the season or whatever.
I don't think so, because they've got him as LT on their roster announcement right now. Same for the Y.
So I mean, he could plug
he
in.
He should be the second line center if he's healthy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, Kirby Dach is the ultimate perfect glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah.
The glass half full is he's only 21 years old. Like it seems like he's been around forever, because he started quickly and he was put on the roster. Probably that was a mistake. On the other hand, we've been able to, the sample size is not as tiny as it usually is with most 21-year-olds. We've seen him quite a lot. I know he was hurt, but we've seen he hasn't shown that offensive side that they expected to see. So it is going to be interesting. He's young, so maybe it's still there. On the other hand, you would have thought we'd have seen some of that already, and we really haven't. So
my other question for Karen would be, is Caden Primo going to be the backup goalie?
No.
Or no, they're going to still put him in Laval and get the line share.
I'm pretty sure he's going to see a lot of action in Laval. That's the point. Yeah. That's why they signed Montembeault to another deal, because Primo just has to be left alone in Laval for a bit. He just does.
And that's fine. I don't disagree with that. I mean, the only thing I could say about the Canadiens, my feeling is they won't be last in the Atlantic, but they'll be second to last. I don't think they'll be last. I think there'll be a little bit of juice and surprise with them, with some of their players that they may be able to outperform somebody a little bit, but that's it.
Well, to be honest, I think they're going to be last in the Atlantic. I really do, because Ottawa improved a lot. Detroit's improving as well. I think Montreal's going to be last.
I mean, unless you see Boston falling all the way to 8th. I mean, I don't know how Montreal doesn't finish.
Well, there are scenarios here. One scenario would be, the Sabres goaltending completely falls apart, which they could. Another scenario is Bruins completely fall apart, which they could.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
those would be the scenarios where they don't come in last.
Hey, Corinne, I know it's been reported that they're talking to Jake Allen about an extension. What are your feelings on that? Because I can't imagine if they do sign him to an extension, it's not going to be like a 4 or 5 year deal. It's probably going to be like a 2-year deal. But what do you think?
2-year stops, I think. But it would make sense. You're going through a rebuild. You don't have to spend a lot of money on goaltending when you don't actually want to, or you don't really expect to win. So why are you going to throw big money to a goalie? I mean, sign him to 2 years, keep him that length, and it'll be the perfect 1A behind Primo if Primo is ready next year, quite frankly. Yeah. In that scenario, I see Montembeault being expendable, like really expendable.
But there is an argument that they don't really need him because they're not going anywhere. And, I know for a fact that there are teams that want him, that would like to acquire him.
Yeah, they don't need him, but you kind of need him as a mentor for your young goalies. Otherwise, who's going to be there with Primo? I mean,
that's a valid point. I guess to me it comes down, and I've not been able to ascertain what teams are offering, but, they keep calling Montreal, and Montreal keeps saying, no, we're not there. We're not going to trade them. And they don't even get to, what it was. But I think if it was enough, I might make the deal. I guess it depends. I mean, the goalie market is so non-existent. That they might get something for him from a team that like if suppose the goalie gets hurt, suppose Toronto's experiment doesn't work, Edmonton's experiment doesn't work, there's a lot of teams that all of a sudden would roll the dice again with him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because I think Karen's right. I mean, you can't. And I also think you need it for the younger players. You need somebody back there who can save your bacon for all the mistakes that you make. So
it's a big thing, with young teams. I mean, and it really is a big, big thing. I completely agree with you. So the best, we guys doing best case and worst case scenarios for them? Wasn't sure, but let's talk about what is the best case scenario. We've been trying to do that for teams. Corinne, tell us what the best case scenario is for the Montreal Canadiens.
That's a tough question because, when you want to talk about best case scenario, you want to say they won't finish last in the division, but that wouldn't be the best case scenario for Montreal right now. They need to finish last. I think best case scenario, we see a lot of improvement from the young players. Jordan Harris, Justin Barron, Caden Goulet, they all perform well. There's growing pains, but not too much. And Slavkovsky, starts slow and then grows into his role, and everyone's happy in Montreal. Yay! But they don't win too many games.
Okay, best case scenario. 2 words: Connor Bedard. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that you see a regression in Caulfield like the first half of last year, which I don't think is going to happen because St. Louis seemed to find the right note with him. If the young guys regress, if Suzuki, if Caulfield regress, if Slavkovsky doesn't play well, that's danger signs. But I don't think that's going to happen because I think St. Louis sort of reached them. But that would be the worst case scenario.
Kevin, what are your thoughts? Best case, worst
case? I don't think this is going to happen either. But I think if Suzuki doesn't take to the captaincy well, I think that could be a real problem. So I would say that's a worst case scenario because I don't think it really matters whether they're 6th or 7th, and you still got to win the lottery anyway. They're not going to be higher than that. And best case scenario, 6th or 5th, and everything goes well. The younger players keep, showing improvement. Slavkovsky is in the Calder Trophy race, and all that. So I think there's promise here. Like they're not. It's not like when Detroit started over, they had absolutely nothing.
Right.
And it was hopeless. And you look at Montreal and, they do have players. They got Suzuki, they've got Cole Caulfield. Now they got Slavkovsky. There are players there on that team, and there's assets to move. I mean, Jake Allen is an asset that eventually can be moved. I mean, it's going to be interesting. So it's not a hopeless situation there that you see sometimes with some rebuilds. But if you're a Montreal fan, just look at Detroit. Steve Yzerman is now drafted 4 times, and they only won 30 games last year. So.
That's the thing. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Here's from our chat room. Best case scenario is they make the playoffs and kick the Leafs out of the playoffs. There you go. How about that? There we go.
I mean, I gave the best case. The worst case would be.
Obviously, that was Michael Cohen, and he can stick it.
It's not. That was
not.
Randy.
It was Randy.
But
yeah, worst case scenario would be they do the wrong thing with Slavkovsky. These changes that they made aren't great. Maybe St. Louis doesn't have the same magic he did last year. That would be the worst case scenario. I'm not expecting it. I think there'll be some things that go the right way, but I do think right now with the way their defense is set up, it's a long haul till they're good. Like they're going to have to hit the free agent market at some point.
I agree, and I think the biggest terrible thing that could happen, not to be negative, but would be St. Louis not working right. Because with St. Louis, it had such a great impact and such a really exciting thing, but was that a fluke? Like, is it something that he came in on a ride of emotion of a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals that was now terrible, and now he comes in there with nothing to lose and gets his team to play really well and is exciting and says all the right things and really just invigorated everybody, right? I mean, he was the most exciting thing last year.
Like my devil's advocate before Corinne answers would be. He went in there and said, well, I'm not going to play with any structure and let the guys do what they need to do. And they did. And then if that doesn't work, then all of a sudden people in the media and everybody else are going to scream, you should have structure. And then you kind of wonder what would happen.
I think he's going to have a lot of leeway, to be honest, because what he's trying to do here is make this team fun to watch again. And that's why fans are buying into the rebuild. And just watching the rookies actually play at the Prospect Challenge, the style of play they were playing, that was a lot more offensive than what we usually see from Montreal Canadiens team, even though it's just prospects. There was a lot of forechecking, there was a lot of offense, a lot of mobility in the defenders. So, I think he's going to have a lot of leeway, and I don't see him not working out. For me, the worst-case scenario would be come trade deadline, Jonathan Drouin had a bad year, can't be traded. Dadonov didn't work out, can be traded. We can't maximize assets. That would be the worst-case scenario. be
Yeah,
honest.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with Montreal fans by putting exciting hockey in front of them, right? Like that's going to be. I mean, this is the Flying Frenchman city. This is the place where they want to see offense. They want to see offense. People I don't think who are young, maybe younger than us, or younger than me at least. You have to go back a ways to remember when the Canadiens were that kind of a team. But that's the Canadiens I grew up with. That's
but
the Canadiens I grew up with was just offense.
That's the thing. I mean, 40 years old. I'm 42, and I've
Right.
never seen a really good offensive Montreal Canadiens team.
Right.
It's always been about pray that St. Patrick can do it, pray that Carey Price can do it.
That is kind of crazy.
But it really was. They were like the Edmonton Oilers before the Edmonton Oilers were the Edmonton Oilers. They were the
But
flying.
we've not seen that. Young people haven't seen that. It's not
Yeah, no, they haven't. Although the Canadiens had incredible defensemen.
That's true.
They had everything. Well, they had everything. That was the thing.
They had everything, but
they had everything.
The Oilers had some defense.
Right. No, the Canadiens were more balanced, but they were incredibly offensive too. They were skilled. They were and they were fast. I mean, they were known as the fastest team, and they are still fast. I mean, they are, even as this young group is still fast. They still have definitely kept the speed up throughout their thing. But this.
Well, I was just saying one little bit of news I think we should just mention before the end of the show, because the Leafs had their media availability today in Toronto, and unsurprisingly, Austin Matthews was asked about his contract situation, because he can sign an extension next July, 1 year or a year before becoming a UFA, and obviously with McKinnon signing his big deal, the question was asked, and he and Kyle Dubas, whose contract is up at the end of the year, both said the same thing. Says, well, I'll talk about it today, and then I don't want to talk about the rest of the year. Does it mean that reporters are going to stop asking them questions? He just said he loves playing in Toronto, and he considers Toronto his home. So, I mean, I think everybody got the feeling that, not that it's not going to be a problem, because if the organization falls apart, then all of a sudden, you could see that question coming up. But I really don't think it's going to be an issue. I think the organization will make him the highest paid player in the league. Yeah. But they just don't want this droning on and on. And with Dubas, he's like, I held players accountable, so I expect to be held accountable. But it's going to get asked. It's going to, Kev.
I do have one question.
That question, go ahead.
Was Rasmus Sandin in camp?
No, he wasn't, Ross. and Ross, I can tell you where. No, never mind.
Okay.
What I noted in McKinnon's contract, which I think, I gotta believe McKinnon was mindful that Matthews is on deck, is early in the contract. They pay him $14.7 in that first couple of years.
No, 15.7 in bonus.
15.7. So, my point in all that, of course, is, we've all thought all along that he was going to get a move toward 20%, which we haven't seen before. And there's no doubt now at the beginning of that contract, it's going to, the first few years are going to be 16 million, no matter what, 16, maybe 16 plus. So it's going to be interesting. See what happens.
Yeah, there is also some talk out there, Kevin. I don't think the Leafs would have a problem with it either. Is Matthews signing another, not 8-year deal, but another shorter term deal, like 5 years, being the highest paid player in the league, and then getting another payday at age 32. I mean, I don't think they're going to complain about it, because they just want him for as long as they can have him, and I think they would sign him at age 32 if he doesn't drop off. So I mean.
Could you put it past him though, asking for 8 years at 16 million?
I don't think he'll ask for 16. I definitely think it'll be like 14 at least. I think it'll be because even with the cap going up, I do believe that he wants to win a Stanley Cup, and he realizes that he can't take all the money, because then they can't put a team around him that can win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean,
there's going to be a lot of pressure on him though. A lot of pressure on him by the Players Association. He's going to feel that he owes it to the other stars. I mean, they've been waiting for the right guy to push this, and he is the right guy. So
exactly. That's the reality. That is the truth. And he's gonna,
and as we all know, Bill Daley has said in 3 years, we're going to take a quantum leap, in the salary cap. So
I guess the other big news up there, Mike, was that that Dubas was informed by Brendan Shanahan that there's no extension this summer, right? No extension this summer.
Yeah, and Dubas, I mean, of course, we don't know privately what he said, but he said, like, I believe in accountability. I hold my players accountable based on their results, and he said that I think I would expect that my tenure with the team would be based on what I've done in the balance of my time with the Leafs. I guess he's not trying to alleviate some of the pressure of if you don't make it past the first round, you're going to get fired. I do think that there is, like, if they bow out again in the first round, unless they are the President's Trophy winner, I just don't see how he's brought back. I think he's got to have playoff success, and I think that's the reason why they made some of the moves in the offseason that they did. I think they consider Matt Murray a better bet in terms of a playoff goaltender than Jack Campbell. So we'll see.
Some news out of Detroit as well.
Yep.
It's certainly not horrible news, but they revealed, but I was struck by the fact that I doubt whether they could have kept this secret in Toronto, but Andrew Kopp had off-season surgery and isn't expected to be back, won't play in the preseason, hopes to be back in the first week of the season. So he joins the injury list that already included Fabre, and they updated on him. He's not till mid-January, January 15. Wallman will be back November, and Pizik, who they signed and then was injured in off-season training after New Year's as well. So, and the other news is Yzerman talked about Edvinsson. The one thing about Yzerman, he doesn't say much. He doesn't commit. But sometimes if you listen to him, he drops hints. And he basically said that, I can't say he's on the team. He's talking about Simon Edvinsson.
Right.
I can't say he's on the team, but, we're basically open-minded, which is, I think, Yzerman speak for, we're going to give him every chance to make the team. And, all that kind of stuff. So some people here locally believe that he is for sure going to be on the team and play in the top four. And we'll see. I mean, he can certainly skate. I saw him play in the prospects game. He's 6'6" and skates like he's 5'11". So
it's incredible.
So, I mean, he's kind of a lot of people can't quite get the years right, and they think that Yzerman took Hedman. He didn't. He inherited Hedman, but he had Hedman when he got there, and now I think they think Edvinsson can be his Hedman. So.
Is he bigger than Hedman a little bit?
So, pardon me?
Is he bigger than Hedman a little bit?
No, they're about the same size.
6'6". I thought Hedman was 6'5".
But I think Hedman's 6'6". Anyway, but he really can skate. He's not quite the rover that Hedman is, and he hasn't really explored his offensive side. He didn't really get that role, although, as somebody pointed out today, he had exactly the same statistics that Moritz Seider did in the Swedish Hockey League. So they really are hoping that he can have a similar impact to Moritz Seider. So,
well, Hedman wasn't Hedman when he first came in either, right? I mean, like, Hedman has become.
No, it took some time. Yeah, it took some time for sure.
It really did. A really interesting thing here before we get out, the NHL. So Ben Bishop, who was traded, who was traded to the Sabres, as a cap move. Basically, he's not going to play again, like an NBA type move. Was trying to get the NHL to approve the rights for him to work for the Dallas Stars hockey operation this season while being on the roster of the Buffalo Sabres. The NHL said no.
But they did it for Chris Pronger.
Yeah, but Pronger worked for the league.
Right.
This is
it's two different teams. So
you're working
competitive. Yeah.
You really can't open that can of worms.
Compare that to baseball, where Harris, who's the new Tigers director of baseball operations, who was also the San Francisco Giants general manager is going to continue to be general manager the rest of the year, even though he's officially in charge of the Tigers. And someone asked him about to assess his prospects, and he said, well, I really shouldn't do that because I'd be assessing them based on our Giants information, and I really don't want to do that. And I thought, like, wow, I mean, that's a little bit of a conflict of interest here where you can't address the Tigers because you have knowledge of how the Giants feel about the Tigers situation. So
couldn't the Sabres literally just write a note and say to the NHL, we're okay with Ben Bishop doing this? Like, why would they care, honestly?
Yeah, like a parent permission slip.
Yeah.
It's a can of worms is what it is. I mean, it's
but I understand the league saying that. Like, it is different with a league versus a team. I mean, that, you're competitive and all that, kind of stuff. But Yzerman, by the way, was involved in the hiring of Harris. They brought Harris in. He had met him before at a Cubs game. Chris Chelios had introduced him. Chelios, of course, is Mr. Cub. And he introduced him, so he'd gotten to meet him. And so Ilitch brought Harris in, Ilitch, the owner, and Steve spent a bunch of hours with him and said, I could have spent a couple of days with him. And then he pointed out, we don't think about this, but he said, he's so much younger than I am that, like he's 35 years old and Steve's in his 50s. But, you don't think of Yzerman as an old man, but that's how he felt. So,
that is crazy. He looks good for his age, Yzerman does.
Yeah.
That's really something. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember, we're not going to be here and we're not going to do a show tomorrow. We'll be back on Friday. We have a lot of conflicts tomorrow. So we'll be back again on Friday. So we'll talk to you then for sure. What happens between now and then? Rosters, camps are starting. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. I have to end the show, so I'm going to go here.